Hello everyone, I'm Vikram Chandra and you're watching the India Story, the only show where we bring you the top stories from India to a global audience. On the show today, we have an exclusive interview with India's Environment Minister Bhupender Yadav on India's agenda at the all-important climate summit COP28, which has just begun in Dubai. We're also going to be discussing the crucial state elections, a semi-final of sorts before the general elections approximately 5 months from now. Voting in 5 states, MP, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Telangana and Mizoram is completed. And before the counting of votes begins on Sunday, experts Sanjay Kumar from the Center for the Study of Developing Societies and senior journalist Nalini Singh and King Shuknag are going to be joining us for what is the big picture. Because I can tell you, the exit polls have only left everybody really confused. So the real answer will only be known on the 3rd of December. The other big story of the week, a government inquiry committee will investigate what are being called serious allegations by the US accusing an Indian of having a hand in a foiled plot to assassinate a US-based Khalistani terrorist. The indictment calls him a leader, of course, so everyone's assuming it is Gurparwan Singh Panoon, the man who has just made a video and making threats against Indian diplomats and Indian airlines. So we're going to be taking a look at that. Remember, these allegations have surfaced months after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused Indian officials of playing a role in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia. So what are the geopolitical implications of all of this, and how is it going to affect the India-US relations going forward? We're going to be joined by Lisa Curtis, a top expert, and also by a former ambassador to the US, Arun Kumar Singh. And we are going to have on the show some really good news this week, an ordeal that lasted 17 days but reached a happy conclusion. We will be telling you about India's bravest rescue mission as 41 miners were rescued from being trapped inside a dark tunnel. But before we look at any of those, a quick reminder of the big headlines this week.
India's Defence Acquisition Council has cleared the procurement of 97 Tejas aircraft and 156 Prachand attack helicopters, in a big boost for the country's military. While the Tejas aircraft are for the Indian Air Force, the Prachand choppers will serve both the Army and the Air Force. The mega procurement deal is expected to cost 1.6 lakh crore. A major indigenous upgrade of the Sukhoi Su-30 MKI aircraft has also been approved. The United National Liberation Front, a banned group in Manipur, has signed a peace agreement with the Indian government, just days after the ban on the group under the stringent UAPA Act was extended for 5 years last month. The deal marks the first time a valley-based armed group has agreed to return to the mainstream by giving up violence. The development is likely a significant step in restoring normalcy in the state, which has been witnessing ethnic violence between the Métis and Kuki communities since May. India's former star batter Rahul Dravid will remain India's head coach in all formats after accepting a contract extension from the BCCI. Dravid's first assignment in his second stint will be India's tour of South Africa. The tour starts with 3 T20Is and as many ODIs, followed by a 2-match test series.
But let's start by taking a look at the assembly elections. And many people thought that, oh, the exit polls are going to be out, and so therefore by around this time, we will know exactly what's happening in every state. Well, let me tell you, if you're completely confused after the exit polls, you're not the only one, because especially in states like Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, what the exit polls seem to be saying is, well, the BJP could win, the Congress could win, it could be a hung assembly, it could be a bit of everything. So frankly, we're all confused, which is why we've got the real experts in here to try and help us decipher this and tell us what is actually going to be happening. So great pleasure to welcome right here in the studio Sanjay Kumar, Professor, former Director, Nalini Singh with us as well, senior journalist and author, and King Shuknag, senior journalist and author, joining us from Hyderabad. So thank you all so much for being with us. Sunny, why don't I start with you? We were talking a few weeks ago and you were giving us that you thought you had a clear idea on most of the states, maybe one state. I think MP you were saying you're not 100% sure which way it's going. Have the exit polls confused you a little bit, or are you still reasonably sure you know what's happening?
I could be reasonably assured because we are also doing a poll. Yes, if you start looking at all the exit poll which came yesterday, there's no doubt anybody can be confused. But if I look at the polls which we have done, we are going to release it shortly. My own sense is that overall, it's a tight election in most of the state, except Chhattisgarh, where I think Congress still has a decisive edge. Congress is certainly winning Chhattisgarh. But if you look at Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Telangana, these are all tight elections. But in a tight election, it's a bipolar election in all the three states. One party would look like inching ahead. In my opinion, Congress has an edge in Telangana, BJP has a slight edge in Madhya Pradesh and slightly bigger edge in Rajasthan.
So you're saying essentially Congress Telangana, Congress Chhattisgarh, BJP Rajasthan, BJP Madhya Pradesh. But you're saying slight edge in Madhya Pradesh, and at least one or a couple of polls are saying 150 for the BJP in Madhya Pradesh.
No, absolutely. I'm saying a slight edge. And Vikram, we should not forget the 2018 assembly election. What happened in 2018 assembly election in Madhya Pradesh, BJP got more votes. They ended up getting less seats. My own sense is that it is likely to be a repeat of 2018 when it comes to vote share. I don't know how it's going to get converted into seats, but that's my sense that BJP is ahead by just 1% of vote, 1.5% vote in Madhya Pradesh.
Okay, so that's your overall picture. Let me just turn to the others. Nalini, saying your overall take on where you think we stand and how confused are you after the exit polls?
Equally confused, but I would say, Vikram, that for me, there are two or three very outstanding conclusions that one can actually draw, or inferences that suggest themselves. One of them is that the SC, the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, and the poorer OBCs are gravitating towards the party that connects with their vulnerability, not just 5 kilograms of free grains for 81 crore people. So if there is a party that has a pro-poor perception about it, they're gravitating towards that. And I think it is the Congress which they're regarding now as one which is closer to their vulnerability. The second thing is that Rajasthan, for me, is a completely fascinating election, and if I may say, the exit poll indications, because this is the Hindi belt and the Hindu belt. And here we found that BJP should have actually swept, because it is this time BJP's turn of the pendulum, of the swing of the pendulum. But if there is actually just now that we are not sure, the experts, the psephologists are not sure, the people who have polled are not sure, I would say, or they're saying that the Congress is giving a fight, then I think that what occurs to me is that polarization has its limits.
All right.
That's one. The other one is local issues dominate. And the third thing is that if it is going to be 90 to 95 seats per party, then horse trading of the kind that we have not seen before, that is going to occur.
Let me just ask you first the big picture, according to you. If you were a betting person right now, I know we'll only find out on the 3rd, what would you say in each of these 5 states?
Well, Vikram, I'm here. Mota, I think Chhattisgarh, which I don't know about at all, but you've already said it's Congress. I get the feeling Madhya Pradesh is weak for the Congress, I think, but I could be wrong. But Rajasthan, I think Congress is ahead. I'm hearing voices from the field in my ears as I say this, the normal voter. And so I think I say that Telangana, about which also I know much less than I should, is actually a complete political surprise. That political tsunamis can occur in this day and age in a welfare-soaked environment, as in Telangana, is a complete eye-opener.
Okay,
so
So on that note, let me just get Kingshuk in, who's there in Hyderabad right now. Kingshuk, your overall take on what you're picking up in the assembly elections, and specifically Telangana, because that's may well end up being one of the big stories of these assembly elections.
Yes, yes. In Telangana, the Telangana Rashtra Samiti has been in power last 10 years. And the Congress was weak earlier. And now people don't want to vote for TRS because they think they have to give to another party. Now BJP doesn't exist in this part of the world. So if the people are not going to vote for the TRS, they'll vote for the Congress. And that's responsible for the revival of the Congress. And Congress has drawn its power also from the fact that it is won in Karnataka. So that's the reason I think the Congress will do very well in Telangana.
We'll of course know all of this on the 3rd in some detail. Then I just wanted to ask you briefly about Mizoram, where it's at least one of the exit polls is saying that the ZPM is winning quite comfortably. How do you see Mizoram, and what does it say for the Northeast? I mean, people forget how many seats there are in the Northeast if you add it all up. Could have a major impact in 24 as well.
No, my own sense is that in Mizoram we are going to have a hung assembly because of the fragmentation of vote between the Congress, MNF and the ZPM. Yes, there are a couple of polls which are indicating that ZPM could be the single largest party or maybe inching close to the majority mark. But because of the division of the votes, three-way division of vote, and remember these are very small constituencies. So in some constituencies you will have 15, 16, 20,000 votes, not more than that. And it's a 40-member assembly. So any party getting 21 seats is going to get a majority. In a three-way contest, my own reading of Mizoram is that it's going to be a hung assembly in Mizoram.
All right, let's just look at some of the big points that were done. Telangana, the fact that if the Congress does actually win Telangana, it will be very interesting because where the Congress has started to lose to regional parties. Historically, it's never really bounced back. It's never bounced back in any of those states where it lost its control and were there. If it happens in Telangana, it will be the first time where the Congress is able to make a revival like that. Do you think that's likely, and do you think that's significant? And also, what does that mean for the Congress? Because if the Congress then starts saying, let's start thinking about this entire concept of should we have alliances or try and rebuild ourselves?
No, I think the two states where at least I see Congress winning election, Telangana and Chhattisgarh, and both has different meaning, and very important, it conveys important meaning for the Congress. One, you have rightly pointed out that in all the states where Congress has lost to the regional party, Congress has found it extremely difficult, almost impossible to come back or regain the dominance, whether it is Bihar, UP, Tamil Nadu, Bengal. We can keep naming state by state. So in that respect, it will give confidence to the Congress that yes, you can still beat a regional party if party puts the act together. Chhattisgarh, remember Vikram, for the last 16, 18 years, Congress has won several state assembly elections, but they have not been able to retain a state. So in that respect, Chhattisgarh victory is also going to be very, very important for Congress, because if Congress wins Chhattisgarh, it would be after a very long time, Congress would be able to retain a state which it has been ruling for 5 years.
All right. Kingshuk, if I could turn to you on that, when it comes to Telangana, when it comes to what's possibly happening out there, is it essentially a factor where the Congress has done something correct and is therefore may well be positioned to do really well in Telangana? Or is it a negative vote against the TRS?
Oh, well, it's like this, that it was always a Congress state. Only after the Telangana was formed that the people turned for the TRS. Now Congress is reviving its fortunes, and therefore, and don't forget, the main thing is that the BJP is not present here. The main national party, BJP, is not present here because the philosophy of BJP reflects the North Indian culture in UP, Bihar, etc., etc. But where is the South Indian culture in BJP? And therefore, that BJP is not there. So if I vote against the TRS, whom do I vote for? I'll have to vote for the Congress only. So that's exactly what's happening.
Right. Nalini is saying the point you were making about scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, the Dalits in general seeming to be backing the Congress, at least on initial data. I'll ask Sanjay about whether that sort of data is showing up. Is there an interesting possibility that is now emerging? If you see what was happening a couple of days back when all the Congress leaders were felicitating Mallikarjun Kharge and saying he's the right person to lead the India Alliance, Is there a possible play that you think the opposition is going to be making after this in the build-up to 2024? Mallikarjun Kharge being projected, perhaps he is, of course, a prominent Dalit leader also. Do you see a play in this?
That's a real possibility. I think what one should, taking the practical view, Mr. Kharge, he's done, I think, extremely well, even in organizing Congress's, this wake-up call that he seems to have given. But we should look at the age factor, that he is 81. And we are talking about going from 24 to 29. But I think that just one thing I would like to say, even in the context of this, has Mr. Kharge managed to indicate that BJP might become a North India party and the Congress would become a pan-India party if it gets Telangana? So I think that is an extremely, that is a very tantalizing kind of concept. And also, Vikram, just turning to what is so many people talk about the women's vote. In Rajasthan, I found, even in Madhya Pradesh to a large extent, in the rural areas, and remember, 70 to 80% of the voters are in rural areas. I found in Rajasthan, the women are in Ghungat. When you ask, who will you vote for? Quietly, you say, who will vote? They will giggle and say, well, he gives me, indicating to the husband or the son that he gives me my roti. So who will I vote for? Whatever he says. So are we romanticizing the women's mindset in the rural areas that now they have an independent mind? Or are they reacting to, let's say, the Chiranjeevi Yojana much more enthusiastically?
Okay, let me just toss that to Sanjay, because he's obviously got the data to back this. So 2-3 points, Sanjay, if I can just throw to you. Women voters, are they really voting differently, which is what some of the initial data shows? B, the entire question of SC/ST, possible consolidation behind the Congress party. And are we already starting to hear signals from the Congress that Mallikarjun Kharge, good person to lead the India alliance, get a Dalit face out there, make the BJP seem like an upper caste North India party? I'm going to come to what the BJP takes away from all of this, but just to wrap up what the Congress is going to take.
First, on the women vote. Yes, if you look at the turnout is increasing, not in one state, but in large number of states. That's the data from the Election Commission of India. This is not a survey data which we can dispute. So yes, turnout of women has increased, and it is increasing election after election. The big question is, do we see women voting differently compared to men? Only slightly. It's not that women and men are voting extremely in a different manner, but we do see women vote shifting towards one party or the other, and generally we see the party which is rolling out welfare schemes which is aimed at benefiting the women voters. So there is a slight shift, and the shift is only in the range of 2 or 3%. We don't see a huge shift of women in favor or against one political party. About the Dalit vote, Dalit Adivasi consolidation behind the Congress. If you look at 2019 Lok Sabha election, there was a huge Dalit Adivasi consolidation in favor of BJP. My own sense is that BJP may not be able to retain similar kind of consolidation among the Dalits and the Adivasis. There are early signs of Dalits moving away from BJP. Which party they will align with? If Congress does well in Telangana and in some other state, I think there is a possibility that Dalits will move away from BJP, come back to the Congress, and this adds to Congress being headed by Mallikarjun Kharge, a prominent Dalit face. So that's going to be an advantage for Congress. I'm not sure whether the India alliance partner are going to accept him as the leader who can lead the alliance.
Let's now turn to the BJP, because look, everyone's been talking about this semi-final before the 2024 verdict. Let's face it, there is a very major factor in 2024 which does not apply in the assembly elections. Absolutely. And that is the persona of Narendra Modi. Let's face whatever the margins and the numbers are, once Narendra Modi comes onto the ballot, it does change the entire equation as an additional 5, 6, 7%. So even if it is to be a 2-2 sort of a situation, would you feel that the BJP will also be quite satisfied with that? Because they'll say, look, if you are able to, let's say, win Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh or one of them or whatever it is, and we're doing that without Narendra Modi being on the ballot, it means we are very comfortable for 2024.
See, victory in 2 states for BJP, I think internally they should feel satisfied about that. But I don't think it's factually correct that they contested these round of assembly election without Narendra Modi. I think it is Prime Minister Narendra Modi who was the face of the party in all the 3 or 4 states.
No, he was campaigning, obviously, but it's one thing to say that this is, this is at least what the argument the BJP has often made in Karnataka and other places, doesn't matter. It's not, it'll be different in 24 because you are then asking for a vote to make Narendra Modi the Prime Minister again.
No, absolutely. That difference voters clearly understand that these are the elections. The state assembly election is to elect a government for the state, to elect a chief minister. In 2024, absolutely clear that this is the election to elect the central government and to elect the Prime Minister of this country. And in that, there is no match for the persona of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and he takes a lot of vote among various sections of voters because of his own popularity.
Right. Nandi Singh, let me get you in on that. What would be your sense? What do you think the BJP is going to take away from this? Will they say, when you're looking at 2024, we are still by far in the pole position because whatever's happening in these assembly elections, it's not a drubbing as happened in 2018. And in 2018, remember, Modi swept the election in 2019. So if we've been able to hold our ground to some extent in 2023, it's a clear signal that 2024 is comfortable. Is that what the BJP would take from this?
Vikram, first of all, what the BJP takes, I'll just remark on that. But I think it is clear to me that BJP is the dominant party for 2024, and Mr. Modi is is the pivot of that. Now, as far as the BJP taking whatever comes, whatever it takes, maybe triumph or whatever, I would say that my eyes are set on Rajasthan, because this for people who watch electoral politics is the litmus test. It is supposed to, it must absolutely, as of the last 30 years pattern, it should swing in a decisive manner to the BJP. And if the BJP is finding itself, according to the exit polls, that is floundering a little bit, then I would say that it is a wake-up call for the BJP for 2024 also. Because we've just said that the BJP's roots are entrenched very deeply in the north of the country and the west of the country. So, in fact, Madhya Pradesh, if BJP wins it, is likely to become a BJP-dominated state as Gujarat. So, if Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh are following that. But Rajasthan will actually tell you that there's something afoot which is not going BJP's way. If with every projection showing that this state changes its throws out the incumbent, and BJP and Congress doesn't get thrown out.
All right.
Then we're talking about Mr. Modi. Just one small thing, that sidelining popular leaders such as Shivraj Singh Chauhan, such as Vasundhara, or bringing them in later when the alarm bells rang that they are needed for BJP to win anything. So I would say that similarly, if we are saying it's only Mr. Modi, well, is that sounding a bit contradictory to what we have seen, Vasundhara and Shivraj, etc., and Dr. Raman Singh being sidelined, and then the results not being so perfect?
All right. King Shikhnag, last question. We're nearly out of time. Your view on whatever is happening in Telangana or Karnataka, for that matter, right next door. Do you think these states will react in the same way or vote in the same way in 24? Because right now there's this entire perception that the South is now building up in is sort of rejecting the BJP. Could all of that flip around in 2024?
You never know. It can flip around also, but generally it will not be expected to flip around, because from me, what is the takeaway is that what I said earlier, the culture of South India is totally different from North India. So BJP has to expand into South India and be a party which is seen as a South Indian party, or at least equally a South Indian party, which is not. So today BJP is very powerful in West India and very powerful in North India, but it is not so in East India. It is not so in South India. So if you have to be an all-India party, you have to have your presence everywhere. So that is the advantage Congress has. Though it's a declining party, the fact is that it was an all-India party.
All right, King
That's
Chaknak, Nalini Singh, Sanjay Kumar, thank you all so much for joining us. I guess we will have lots more discussions as we actually enter 2024. It promises to be a really exciting period in the world of politics. But thank you all so much for joining us on this. Okay, from assembly elections, let's move to another really big story that is happening this week, which is, of course, COP28, climate change. Remember, whatever else we're discussing, this is important conversations taking place about how to save the planet. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi is there at COP28. This essentially is what he said in his opening statement.
आज मैं इस फोरम से एक और प्रो प्लैनेट, प्रोएक्टिव और पॉजिटिव इनिशिएटिव का आह्वान कर रहा हूं। यह है ग्रीन क्रेडिट इनिशिएटिव।
Well, I was in Dubai earlier this week and I got a chance to sit down with the Minister for Environment and the person handling climate change, Bhupender Yadav. I got a chance to sit down with him in Dubai and I asked him about the basic message that India is going to be sending everyone else at COP28 and also what are India's expectations from this particular event. This is what he said to me. Let me start, sir, with the fact that obviously COP28 is here and there are going to be lots of conversations and discussions. What are you going to be telling everybody at COP?
This is the 28th COP. Sometimes we think that every COP is a final COP and coming with the final conclusion. But it's not to be happen. Because every year world meet together, think together about the future of the world. There is one shloka of Upanishad because in India we are getting a wisdom from Upanishad. It says, Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Vunaktu Sah Viryam Karvavahi Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi. Let us we all come together, relish together, think together and work together for the prosperity and goodness of the world. That's our object. So here the different countries coming there, academia coming there, even the report on the basis of science is there, policy makers are there, business groups are there, civil society are there. Let us we all come together and we think that where the world is going with the impact of human being, what we will do. Even in this COP also, we assure that under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, India will also the part of solution, not to the part of problem. And that is the main stand and commitment of India.
So India's ahead of what the commitments are. But at a macro level, we are still falling short. So there is still reason to be concerned because as a planetary level, at the COP level, we're still not getting to where we would like to be right now.
You see, every country who is giving their national contribution, you know, the national communication which we are going to be filed in this COP also, our third national communication. The national communication prepared by the country on the basis of some points. First, the total capacity of that nation, their greenhouse emission, their mitigation effort, their adaptation effort, their research, initiative, policies and all these things. We are also going to be submit our third national communication in this COP also. India is the country which is having a total land area of the world, 2.3% land area of the world. But we are having a population of 17%. You compare what is our lifestyle and what is our contribution to that. We have a 17% of population of the world and our carbon emission is 4 to 5%. If you counted the 17% population of developed countries, their carbon emission is 60%. So that is the contribution of India. Even our historical contribution is 5%. Our per capita consumption is less than 1/3 of the world average. That is the contribution of India. Apart from this thing, you will find the other thing also. because of our development need, our energy resources and energy capacity is increasing. But if you compare to last 9 years, our per capita GDP emission is reduced. So what developmental model India produced under the leadership of Prime Minister, that economic growth with environmental care. That is the model which is India presented here in the world today.
Because quite often, people wonder, here's a country which is still an emerging country. India is not a rich country by any stretch of imagination right now. And as you correctly said, the per capita emissions of India are among the lowest
according
in the world.
to the GDP growth also.
According to GDP. So the per capita emissions are therefore so low that you could argue that India should be allowed to, but this is a change in philosophy now, that India is saying, though our per capita emissions are low, we will still try and control it and cap it because we're caring about it. We'll be trying to...
That's the reason we are enhancing our capacity also. Even you see in the last 9 years, our solar energy capacity increased 25 times. We are depending on our renewable resources are at 50 times. Our global carbon shrink is 1.97 billion. That is a recorded. We are also caring about, we are taking so much climate action also. After Paris, under the leadership of Prime Minister, India made a collaboration with France, the International Solar Alliance. India made the second climate action program, that is the CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure. Then third is the leadership for industry transformation. Number 4, recently Prime Minister also announced in the G20 also the International Global Fuel Alliance. Then the other, which is the unique for the purpose of saving the biodiversity also, India announced the Big Cat Alliance also. So India in the domestic level, we are doing a better compared to the other countries, and in the international level, we are also part of and taking an initiation for climate action program, which are very relevant and very appropriate for this point.
Sir, before we end here, just wanted to ask you, what are you hoping for? What are the messages that you hope you will leave COP28 with?
First, we are waiting the outcome of the global stock take. Already I say that that is a very important aspect. Second, India believes that development of the renewable energy is one of the best available solution for future of the world also. And third, COP28 should adopt the framework of the global goal of adaptation, because that is also important, and we must increase the funds for the global adaptation practices. I think these 3 things is important. Apart from that, the earlier decision taken in the Glasgow and Sharm el-Sheikh also, especially in the Glasgow, it was announced Glasgow to Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation document, that is also not completed. The loss and damages fund, which a decision was taken in the last COP, some negotiation has also started. Third thing, India being a leader, this time we in our domestic union budget, we are giving a green budget, and India also started the mechanism of carbon credit market. Glasgow, we accepted the Article 6, but not much action taken on the Article 6 in future carbon credit market also. So that will be also discussed, and we must give to our next generation cleaner and greener earth. For that purpose, we are coming here, meet together, sit together, think together.
The US Justice Department dropped a bombshell this week, filing charges against an Indian national in connection with an alleged plot to assassinate what the indictment called a US-based Khalistani leader and a citizen in New York, which is assumed to be the person whom India is accusing of direct involvement in terror. Gurpranam Singh Panoon, who's of course the person who's been making threats against Indian diplomats and Indian airliners. Now, the indictment, or a charge sheet filed in the New York District Court, says that the accused, 52-year-old Nikhil Gupta, faces charges of murder for hire. The document reveals Gupta's alleged connection to an Indian official, referred to in the indictment as CC1, who's a former CRPF officer. The The US document, however, does not mention the target. According to media reports, as I said, it is Gurpatwant Singh Panun, who's a separatist Khalistani leader who's both a US and a Canadian citizen and whom India is accusing of terrorism. Now, according to the indictment, CC1 recruited Gupta in May 2023 to orchestrate the assassination. The indictment also suggests that there were multiple individuals involved in the alleged plot, from planning to arranging the logistics. But interestingly, it also references the June 18 killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia, Canada, by masked gunmen. And the indictment essentially suggests a possible Indian role in that killing as well, which ties in with the accusations that Canada has been making. The document suggests that just before Nijjar's killings, there were exchanges between Gupta and his associates, indicating his awareness of the impending killing of Nijjar. Now, Czech authorities, according to the indictment, arrested and detained Gupta on June the 30th in Czechoslovakia, and there is, of course, a bilateral extradition treaty now between the US and Czechoslovakia. So we'll have to see how that actually pans out and whether there will be an extradition to the US. But the American indictment immediately prompted Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's of course gone to Parliament to make direct accusations against the Indian government, to come out and say, well, you know, India needs to take the Canadian accusations also very seriously. But it has to be said that India's reaction immediately to what the US has said has been very different to the Indian reaction to what Canada has said. And the US has been prompt to acknowledge the fact that India has responded in a positive manner to whatever the United States is saying. We've heard Anthony Blinken announcing that we are seeing it as a positive development that India says it is taking these accusations seriously and that it will investigate. And he said that the US will be waiting to see what the outcome of that investigation is. So clearly a lot happening out here, and also clearly very different response and very different reaction from India to what the US has said and to what Canada had said in a rather brutal manner a little bit earlier. So what does all of this mean? Where are we going to proceed from here? And what, by the way, does this also say about one question that still remains unanswered? Whatever you may feel about terror plots or the possible plot to kill and whether that should be done or whether it should not be done, there is another overall question that is hanging over all of this. What happens between friendly countries, between India and the United States, or for that matter, between India and Canada? What happens if there are people who are preaching terrorism or sedition or making threats of violence, who are residing in these friendly countries, who may be citizens of those friendly countries, but who are making terror threats or incitement of violence against India, Indian citizens, Indian diplomats, or Indian interests? Now, okay, you could have the US and Canada saying that it's wrong to come in and assassinate them. They are American or Canadian citizens. But at the same time, the Indian point seems to be fine, but you've got to do something about these. You cannot go on coddling and allowing people who are inciting terrorism, inciting separatism. You cannot continue to give them a free pass. And that was stated directly by the Indian government in its statement, saying Canada, for example, continues to allow and encourage anti-India extremism. So where do we stand on all of this? Let's get in two of the top experts in this field. Lisa Curtis joining us, Director, Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for a New American Security. She's joining us from Washington, D.C. And Arun Kumar Singh, who's been a former Indian ambassador to the United States. Both of them joining us. Thank you so much for being with us, Lisa and Ambassador Singh. Lisa, let me start by asking you this, because I remember meeting you in Washington, D.C. just after the Canadian accusations were actually made. Now this indictment has been published. How do you see this? Where do you think this is going to go from here?
Well, I think this is a challenge to the U.S.-India relationship. I think that both countries will be motivated to try to move past it, to find some kind of diplomatic solution, given the high stakes in the U.S.-India relationship. I mean, Washington and New Delhi both view China as the major challenge, the number one threat, and they recognize they need each other. to manage that threat. So I think so long as India takes the concerns seriously, and I think we can see that so far India is, then I think that we can find a way forward.
Lisa, would you say that a lot of that is happening already? Because let's face it, this person was arrested way back in June, that, around about the time when the Indian Prime Minister's state visit happened with so much fanfare. G20 happened, the 2+2 is proceeding. So clearly, India and the US at least seem to be indicating that the relationship is proceeding and proceeding reasonably smoothly despite these allegations and charges.
That's right. I think the Biden administration has wanted to compartmentalize this issue, and that's why President Biden moved forward with attending the G20 summit. The two leaders had a very productive meeting. Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin visited India just a few weeks ago for the 2+2. So they've clearly not wanted this issue to disrupt the U.S.-India relationship. But again, I think whether or not it does impact relations really does hinge on whether Prime Minister Modi and his government take the issue seriously and take some action.
Ambassador Singh, if I could just turn to you. We seem to be seeing a very different Indian reaction to what the United States has said compared to the way India reacted to what Justin Trudeau said in Canada. Is it partly because the United States has handled this in a slightly more sensitive manner, doing a lot of talking behind the scenes, whereas Justin Trudeau essentially just walked into Canadian Parliament and accused the Indian government of, assassinating Canadian citizens without producing any direct evidence of one sort or the other? Or is it also because of a different level of relationship between India and the US and India and Canada? Canada, of course, a country which continues to shelter a lot of anti-Indian extremists. How do you see the difference in the two reactions?
I think it's different because of the way Canada and the US have handled it. In the case of Canada, if you see the statements from the Indian side, no evidence has been shared with them so far. And the Canadian Prime Minister made a statement in Parliament, really, in a political sense, highlighting the issue. If they wanted to convey their concern, there are ways to do it. You raise it privately, you do leaks in the media. But for the Prime Minister of Canada to make a statement in Parliament, was really raising the ante. So that was one. And if you see the US case from whatever has come out, it has been raised privately by the officials, by the leadership. There have been leaks to the media. The first leak was done to the Financial Times, not a US paper, a European paper, and then picked up by the US papers. And I think all this was done also because there was a formal indictment coming. And in the US system, once the investigations begin, they have to lead to a formal indictment. And when the formal indictment comes, it will all be in the public domain. So in the sense that ground was being prepared. And as Lisa indicated, I think both countries are working to ensure that it does not really impact the overall relationship. And India has also indicated that it set up a high-level committee which is going to look into it. But that having been said, one must note that at this stage, it is only an indictment. It's not a conviction.
Well, it's an important point. It's an indictment and not a conviction at that time. But Ambassador Singh, I just wanted to ask you that presumably if the United States has been sharing a lot of this information with India over the last few months, then the Indian authorities would have known that this is coming at a certain point, and therefore perhaps that would have influenced how they were reacting to the Canadian allegations also. Or was it the case, you think, that the US didn't share all of these details with India, and therefore India has been taken a bit by surprise by what's actually there in the indictment?
So I wouldn't know for a fact, because not all information is out in the public domain. But I think one can anticipate that I think in India, perhaps there would have been sense that more was coming. And I think with the kind of reaction that you saw from the Five Eyes partners, that, they're all coming in to support Canada. There were even hints at that time in the media that more information would be forthcoming on this.
Lisa, I guess the point I'm trying to make out here is that perhaps a friendly thing to do for the US also would be to sort of let the Indian government know that look, there's XYZ information, this is coming out in an indictment, it's soon going to be public information at some point, so therefore you should allow this to shape your reaction. For example, to Canada, maybe you need to have a slightly different reaction to Canada because all of this could come out and you could be perhaps left looking a little embarrassed. Do you think some of that may have been happening in the background?
Well, I think it does seem that the Canadian government raised it privately with Modi first before Prime Minister Trudeau went on the floor of the Canadian Parliament. So, you know, he did raise it, but there were probably complications, right? Because the information about the assassination in Canada came from the United States based on its investigation operation that it was running in the United States. So, you know, probably Prime Minister Trudeau's hands were tied in that he was relying on the U.S. information investigation to complete. So, you know, there's all kinds of legal matters involved. You know, I have no idea what was said behind closed doors. You know, what we do know from the media is that it was raised.
Right, Ambassador Singh, let me just move to the other point now, which is, look, let's not get into the ethical debate of, whether, targeted assassinations or killings are justified or not. Although people will raise that question. They will mention and talk about the point that it's not as if, the other countries, the United States in particular, have not done targeted assassinations on the past. They have. They've repeatedly done it with terrorists who are targeting their interests. Now, in the Indian side, if you read what the overwhelming public opinion is, it is to say, all right, fine, whatever the questions on targeted assassinations are, if the rule of law has to apply, then people making outright terror threats as clearly and as openly as people like Panun have been doing, including against airliners, including against Indian diplomats, then surely the rule of law also has to extend to finding a way for him to be subject to the consequences of those actions. Questioned, indicted, arrested, brought to justice, something like that.
No, absolutely. I think there is a sense in India, based on facts, based on what people are saying, that elements that are promoting violence, elements that are promoting terrorist activity are given space in Canada to operate freely. And no action is being taken against them because the segments of the Canadian political leadership is dependent on political support from them. And so there is a sense of double standards in terms of how that is approached. Even in the US approach, for example, the US went ahead and, as President Trump claimed, killed the head of the Al-Quds force of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. So here was a killing done of a government official of another country because US has the power. So there is an element of double standards. Or US, for example, took action against the Al-Qaeda terrorists that were acting against the US, or ISIS elements that were acting in the US. US argument is that there was no due process that they were being subjected to.
I would take one issue, though, Arun. I mean, there is numerous documentation against Soleimani. I mean, it was known that he was involved in the killing of U.S. soldiers and others. With Panun, I mean, is there actually evidence that he was involved in violence? I know there's...
No, I was just actually about to interrupt you to say that you don't have to get any evidence. You've got a video recording of Panun, the man himself speaking and making a direct threat. So to that extent, there is evidence. Don't go out and do anything further. But you do have a situation where if you're saying, okay, you can't assassinate a person, you can't kill an American citizen on American soil, you can't come and assassinate, that's fine. But it would be fair for other countries to say, okay, that's fine, but you're taking that position, although you've done something different yourself. But then you must take action against people like that. You must subject him to the process of law, because that is the stance that the US would expect other friendly countries, or Canada would expect other friendly countries to take also, if people are making threats against them.
Well, I think the US does follow the rule of law when it comes to terrorism, but we also have free speech. So I think, one would have to look at exactly what he said and whether it was incitement to violence, and if so, what are the penalties? And I guess if anything, comes out of this disastrous situation, perhaps it's, the FBI will be watching these people more closely and keeping an eye on these fringe Sikh leaders because they really are part of a fringe group.
Right, let's get a final word from you, Ambassador Singh, because I don't think either the US or India, for that matter, should be okay with somebody saying, look, we're going to talk about blowing up an airliner, especially when this is the same sort of a group which has done exactly that in the past. So threats need to be taken seriously, or threatening diplomats, putting up posters of theirs and calling for violence. So I guess those videos need to be watched because that seems to be a direct threat. It's not a freedom of speech issue. Those are direct threats and incitement to violence that therefore needs to be taken seriously.
And Vikram, if I can make 2 points, there is a sense in India that, especially in Canada, but also to some extent in US and UK, elements that are involved in violence directed against India are not really handled with the seriousness it deserves. And very often, of course, the US, from its own reasons, takes actions against certain groups when it wants to pressurize them and doesn't do it when it doesn't want to pressurize them.
All right, I guess it would be fair to say that neither the US nor India nor any other country should really be okay, I guess, with incitements of violence, because that's not entirely a free speech issue. But Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. Ambassador Singh, thank you so much for being with us as well. We're going to have to leave it there. We are running out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. And let me turn now to our regular segment, what the global press has been saying about India. And I have to say there was a lot about a moment of real euphoria, of real joy, of relief, and a celebration of heroism as people crawled into the darkest, most claustrophobic of tunnels, rat miners as they are called. And they literally dug with their bare hands and with tools to do that last bit of a rescue. And they ended up saving 41 people who'd been trapped in that tunnel in Uttarakhand for a long time. And that was really a mission that was being watched across the world, that the final moments of that were telecast on channel after channel all across the world. And here's how some of the global press covered what is being described as India's bravest rescue mission, as those 41 trapped workers were pulled out of the collapsed tunnel in Uttarakhand on November the 28th. The BBC, for example, reported on the celebrations outside the tunnel as the first workers came out. CNN spoke about many of the setbacks that the teams had encountered, the technical problems before the last few meters were literally drilled by hand by the rat miners. Al Jazeera, actually all across the board, the global press covered that in great depth. And that's it on this episode of the India Story, but we're going to leave you with these images of euphoria and of heroism. Remember, this was a multi-agency rescue mission of more than 600 people who clocked more than 400 hours to rescue 41 workers. There was a concerted effort, people not just from India but across the world, everyone playing a role. But I have to say, the group that perhaps played one of the most crucial roles, one of the most heroic roles, were the people who dug through that last stretch of around 12 meters for 26 hours using the most basic of tools. The 12 rat hole miners, men ranging in age from 20 to 45 years, showcasing exceptional skills in maneuvering through narrow pipes and excavating soil, a craft integral to their work, which they've often been doing. But they dug that approximately 12 meters in just 26 hours, a task that under normal circumstances could perhaps take days. So we're going to leave you with these images of India, where ordinary men moved mountains, quite literally, for days to rescue their comrades from deep inside a tunnel. These miners and their rescuers and the rest of the team and the people who worked so diligently to save those 41 miners, all of them are the real heroes of the India story.